Welcome, folks. Good morning. Welcome. As people are coming in, just a reminder that this meeting is being broadcast live. Always good to keep your microphone in the mute position if possible because of that. Great to see everybody bright and early, clearly with multiple cups of coffee already. That's excellent. Excellent. Okay. Welcome to those just coming in. A reminder that we're broadcasting this conversation live, and good to keep your microphone in the mute position when you're not trying to engage with the body. In a very rainy morning in Eugene, Oregon. I hope all well where you are. Thank you for your faithfulness yesterday evening. I'm seeing the new admissions start to trickle and slow. So just a reminder that the meeting is being broadcast live. It's always safest to have your microphone in the mute position when you're not trying to share a word. Thanks, everyone. I can start with some announcements, but Bishop, you want to say a word of welcome first?
Certainly. Thank you. Welcome. I hope everybody got good sleep last night. It was fun to see your names and your faces pop onto the screen again this morning. By the tender mercy of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us. And yet again today the sun rose and the earth became visible in the light of both the sun and of God's grace in our lives. So it's good to be together again this day. And as we gather, I thought we might just kind of take account of what the sun rises on as the earth orbits, as the earth turns on its axis and the sun sheds its light on all of the various places around the earth, and what we bring into our lives, into our awareness, into our prayers, our hearts, and what we lift to God in prayer today as we begin. And so if you want to go into the chat and just say, what is it that on the face of the earth you are aware of the light of the sun and the light of God's grace shining on this morning? My new puppy. That wasn't me, that was Terry. Gentle rain, tree branches, ducklings, my child, Steve's birthday. Think of all the birthdays that are being celebrated today. New leaves, family waking up, graduating from high school, seniors, rich and poor alike, freshly bloomed trees, backyard ready to be renovated, rain and dog. Anniversary, Hawaii, trip to Hawaii, grandson, rescue pups, rescue pups at breakfast. Teilhard de Chardin has a kind of hymn to the universe there's a book called Hymn to the Universe, and he describes the sun, the light of dawn spreading across the earth being like the offering at the communion table. The labors of our lives, the loves of our hearts, the communities that we are a part of, the agony and the challenges that we live with, the suffering, all of it being set on the table of the earth as if it were the table of communion. And so we offer all of these things. We offer Ukraine. We offer Tonga, recovering from flooding and volcano. We offer bishops in Africa, fearful for their lives. We lift the delight of family celebrations, of personal achievements. We lift the brokenness of our church as we hear again the words of the psalm. The earth is the Lord's, and all that is in it, all that is in it, and those who live in it, all those who live in it. And we carry all of this as best we can in our hearts, knowing that God loves better than we are able to love, and that we dwell in the fullness and the goodness of God's love that blesses all of the earth. So God be with us this day as we carry many of these concerns into our work, and do it in the privileged opportunity we have to be in one another's presence and to hear one another's voices and to seek the way of peace and grace together as we struggle with the work that's before us. All right. I'm going to turn to Lori Day. I think all of you were here yesterday, maybe not all of you, but I think everyone knows all of the players here today. But Lori's going to help us review the agenda for the day.
Thank you, Bishop. It is good to see all of you this morning. Our agenda is fairly simple today. We are going to begin with a roll call again. Laura Jacob Bartlett will lead us in a roll call just to make sure everyone is here and gets to speak into the room. Adam will then lead us with some reminders about voting, how that will happen. And from there, we will start working through the legislation. And then at the end, we will just have some announcements. We will confirm what's going to be on the consent calendar. We'll have a blessing, and then we will depart. So thank you, and I think we're ready for Laura.
Laura, will you update the roll call?
I will. Thank you, Bishop. I had been thinking of what new creative method I could use to call the roll. And frankly, my brain cells are not firing in a very creative mode. So we'll do the exact same thing we did yesterday. It worked before. I'm going to go for the hope that it will work again. So I will call your roll and then your name. If you would use those few seconds to unmute yourself. And once again, you've got 3 words to let us know whether or not you are here. So, annual conference lay leader, Paul Nickel.
Present, and present, still excited.
Annual conference associate lay leader, Sarah Richard.
Sleepy, but here.
Board of Pensions representative, Steve Mitchell.
God is good.
Board of Ordained Ministry chair-elect, Terry Watanabe.
Here.
Board of Ordained Ministry elder, Amanda Gale Reed. I believe Amanda Gale was not going to be with us today. I'll just check to make sure. All right. Cabinet representative, John Tucker.
Here.
Council on Finance and Administration representative, Mark Bateman.
Present.
Commission on Religion and Race representative, June Fothergill.
Good morning.
Commission on Religion and Race representative, Funga Taufo.
Yep.
Cascadia Clergy, Laura Beville.
My coffee.
Cascadia Clergy, Tom Orquiza Renardo.
Awake, mostly alert.
Cascadia Lay Leader, Don Chastler.
God's peace to all of us.
Columbia clergy, Ted Myers. He just, Ted is here. He just emailed me. I will work on, he got booted out somehow. So he'll be back soon, or at least as soon as I get through this list. And if somebody else wants to, on the leadership, wants to email Ted, if possible, to give him the link, that might help. Columbia clergy, Tilly Makepeace. Sounds like Tilly's not here. And we know Cynthia McLeod is not here, nor Suzanne Wardenar. So moving on to David Childress.
Here I am.
Sorry, I forgot to mention your Crater Lake clergy. And also Crater Lake clergy is Warren Light.
Lord, amend me.
And you were not late, so it's not Warren late. Crater Lake lay leader Ria Gallo. I know that Ria is doing some child wrangling this morning, so she may be in a bit. Sage clergy, Brenda Seen.
A great day.
Sage clergy, Mike Connor. Okay. Sage lay leader, Sharon Bryan.
Sharon raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good morning.
You got to say something because I'm looking at my list on the screen, so I'm not looking at your face right now. Sage District Laity, Carol Evans.
I'm here.
Is Carol here?
Yeah.
I am here.
Okay, great, thanks. Ministry Leadership Team Representative, Wendy Woodworth.
Present.
Board of Trustees Representative, Christy Deeren.
Hello from Blackfoot.
United Women in Faith Representative, or President, actually, as well as representing, Chris Mitchell.
I'm here.
And Young Adult Representative Mariano Estrada.
I am here.
All right, I believe that gets the roll call. I will work on getting Ted Myers in unless somebody else has already communicated with him.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for keeping track of us.
You are welcome.
Not letting us wander off. And Adam's going to help us recall the legislative process this morning.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bishop. Just a couple of notes at the top of our conversation this morning. When we begin to vote, it will be very helpful if people who are not voting members of the assembly turn off their cameras. That's mostly staff in our circumstance this morning. And then it's very helpful if you kind of get your physical hand up there for us, for Laura and I to be counting, even more so than your electronic hands. And that's a very simple way for us to go around and do the counts as we move through the votes. Might also recommend that as we do our perfecting work, that speeches in favor or against might be limited to 2 minutes in length. And then I have 2 scheduling requests. I have a request that AR number 3 be addressed first this morning, and AR number 7 be addressed at the end of our time together. Bishop.
So let me just ask, is there any objection to moving those two? That's for the convenience of people who have particular interest and responsibility for those and can't be here the entire day. Is that acceptable? So we'll move AR3 to the first for consideration and AR7 to the last, even after the standing resolutions, the end of the day. Although I saw Mark Bateman here, didn't I? Is it Mark here? Yeah,
Bishop,
Mark.
my request to move that to the end is so that I can do some additional work on it before we spend legislative time.
All right, so is there any objection to those 2 changes in the order? All right, we'll make those changes then. Thank you very much. One of the things that happens is after we have the conversation on Friday evening, more work gets done. That's part of the legislative process, and so hopefully we have legislation that's been just worked over one more time by the time we're actually voting. So thank you for that work, Mark. And you know, I didn't start by saying, Adam, you did an awesome job yesterday. Everybody did. Ethan, Laura, Lori, really, Rondelay, who you can't see, Rondelay and I are here in the Greater Northwest offices, the Episcopal offices in Des Moines. And so if you hear airplanes going over, that's because we are in the flight path. And we have the windows open for air quality during COVID times. So back to you, Adam. Or did you finish?
Thank you, Bishop. My only note is folks can see in the chat for the language that shepherds might use when we come to the legislation that you're shepherding to help us move that legislation. That language is in the chat. And if it gets too buried in the chat, we'll repost it.
And it is our intention to take short breaks about every hour as we do our work. So you can anticipate that, and Rondelay's tracking it for me. If either of us or both of us forget, you can put a note in the chat to remind us that it's time for a break. Or if you think that we need a break for whatever reason at a different time, you can send that chat as well. Thank you. All right, we're going to begin then with AR3. And let's see, Adam, did we have a shepherd for this finally?
John Tucker.
John Tucker, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of action request number 3.
All right, this motion is not before you. I'm going to rule it out of order. Nothing personal, John. So as we met last night, I forewarned you that I would be doing that. And let me just read gosh, because I didn't anticipate this at the beginning, I don't have this in front of me. I read last night, I'm sorry. Right. So I want to read this because I want you to be able to refer to it if you need to at another time, and we can get this to you in writing if anybody is interested. AR3 is out of order. The annual conference does not have the authority to define the terms and conditions of disaffiliation by a local church. Paragraph 2553.4, and you'll recall, if you open your book of discipline, you can't find paragraph 2553.4 because it was adopted at the 2019 special session of the General Conference. And so it exists in an arcane place called the errata of the 2016 book of discipline. And that's why I want to make sure and read it to you so that you are aware of what it says. Paragraph 2553.4 clearly states that, and this is the quote, if the church conference, this is any local church, this is about local church disaffiliations. We talked about this last night. If the church conference votes to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church, the terms and conditions for that disaffiliation shall be established by the Board of Trustees of the applicable annual conference, with advice of the Cabinet, the annual conference treasurer, the annual conference benefits officer, the director of connectional ministries, and the annual conference chancellor. And then just to go on further, the terms and conditions, including the effective date of disaffiliation, shall be memorialized by a binding disaffiliation agreement between the annual conference and the trustees of the local church. So the authority to establish both the standard terms of disaffiliation, some of those come from the General Council on Finance and Administration, but then the annual conference can add others. The Board of Trustees is the authorized agency of the annual conference to add those additional terms and conditions, or to negotiate specific ones, terms and conditions that are specific to a particular church, if there's an extraordinary circumstance. So It is not, it was not proper. I apologize to the annual conference for this. It was probably not proper that the Board of Trustees brought that, those terms and conditions that standard form, the template, we call it, last year to annual conference. I probably should have ruled that out of order, but it would be not in order now for the annual conference to try and amend something it doesn't have the authority over. Is that clear? Thank you. Thanks, John.
Always like to be declared out of order early in the day.
All right. We move then to, yes, I see Paul Nickel.
Bishop, in the chat, it sort of got lost yesterday, but as we were discussing this matter, the question came up in chat from the layperson who moved this action request. What is the process to appeal your ruling this out of order? And I just feel it merits a response.
Thank you. So I believe, and I think that, is Paul Cosgrove with us, my chancellor, our chancellor?
It looks like it.
Yes, Bishop, I am.
My sense is that that would be a question of law, and that I would not, that someone would have to request that the body submit a question of law, and that would happen appropriately at the annual conference session, I think. But Paul, how would you respond to the question? How would my ruling that this is out of order be addressed?
I think you're right, Bishop. The annual conference is the place and the time where that would be decided. And when the report from the Legislative Assembly regarding this item is made, somebody could ask for a ruling of law, which you would then give, and the body could then appeal it if it chose to do so. If it chose to do so, the rulings of law of bishops go directly to the Judicial Council for final decision.
The other way to engage in this is for an individual or a group to approach the Board of Trustees, which could review and change the provisions. And I don't want to enter into debate here. A complicating thing about this from my perspective is, while it states in the narrative that it wants to make it easier for churches that want to be inclusive right now to do so, wants to make it easier for them to leave the denomination, it would also make it easier for churches who don't want to be inclusive to leave the denomination and keep their assets. And so without fulfilling financial liability that they carry. So that's a little complicated, and it didn't seem to be part of the intention of the writers, but I do think it's part of the consequences of this request. Right? But I'm not sure who communicates that back to Suzanne. Adam, you'll take responsibility for that?
Yep. Suzanne and I are in communication on this. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. And thank you for recalling the question, Paul. We did note it as it came in, but it wasn't, and I don't always keep track of what role each person is in on the Friday session. So I was not thinking about Suzanne not being here today.
Mark Bateman's hand is up, and then Lori.
Mark Bateman? And then Lori?
Bishop, is there anything that we need to do? So the action request that was adopted last year that should have been ruled out of order, is there anything we need to do to clean up conference policies or anything like that? Or does that sort of happen automatically based on the decision you just made?
Yeah, I think the thing that was adopted by annual conference came to it from the Board of Trustees. So the annual conference didn't act in any way that was that diverged from the Board of Trustees' prior action. So I think the Board of Trustees' action stands at present, and we just need to make sure going forward that we don't allow any divergence. That we don't act as though the annual conference had authority to amend or change the provisions that are adopted by the Board of Trustees. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I see Lori.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm with people that I'm reviewing the chat from last night. I believe the question was not about questioning the rule of law, but asking what additional options, if something is ruled out of order, what additional options in this situation would be available. So we will work with Adam to make sure that we appropriately respond to Suzanne's questions.
In fact, let's just pause for a moment. This body could refer this action item to the Board of Trustees. Is that true? Or would it have to recommend that the annual conference, probably it would have to recommend that the annual conference refer it. Anyway, I at the moment it's out of order, so I think we just sit with it there. People who want to further this conversation, the proper place to do that is the Board of Trustees. All right, then moving on to AR1. The shepherd, I believe, is June Fothergill. Is that right?
Yes, Bishop.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yes, I move that the Legislative Assembly adopt AR1, identifying and opposing apartheid in the Holy Land.
All right, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
I see a second. It's properly before you and open for discussion. Is there discussion? Oh, I see Warren Light. Boy, it's hard to see those hands. It is interesting. Warren, let me just, to test, put your hand really close to the camera. Yeah, that really does help. Thank you. There's just some darkness in some of the screens that makes it hard to see.
Maybe my hands, I have to make my hands bigger.
But your hands are fine.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see you too, Bishop. I just wanted to, I'm in support of this, but I want to note the irony of asking the US government, because the description, the UN description of apartheid, if you go into many of the ethnic communities, communities of color in this country, they'll say this US government is also an apartheid government. And so I hope that when we're doing these things, there's a sense of humility and also a sense of reality as to what we're talking about when we're naming apartheid and when we're naming injustice. So, but I am in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? I see Brenda Seen.
I am not in support of it. And the reason is what Warren said, is that because there are so many other places, including our own country, that can fit that definition, this seems to be anti-Semitic to me, to single out the Jewish nation and to single them out when there's no intention to preserve the state of Israel, their right to exist.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, we're going to try voting. We're going to invite those of you who are not voting members to turn off your cameras for the vote, just for the vote. And some of you know better than I do if that has occurred. It looks to me like that has occurred. And so I invite you now, if you're in favor of AR1, lift your hand visibly in front of your camera so we can see it and counting. Keep it there until I tell you that we're finished. All right, thank you. And those opposed, lift your hand. All right, thank you. And those abstaining.
Laura and I have 9 in favor, 10 opposed, Bishop.
And no abstentions?
No abstentions.
Thank you. So this has failed by a small margin, which is an interesting outcome and suggests that more conversation might be appropriate in the future. This is a position that has been supported substantially previously in the life of the Oregon-Idaho Conference. So let's just take that as an invitation to more study, more conversation. As we know, this is a long-term intractable conflict in the Middle East, and it's not a surprise that there are complicated responses among us to it. Thank you. Let's turn to AR2 and Laura Baville. I believe you're prepared as the shepherd.
Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of AR number 2.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see Mark Bateman is the second. So it is properly before you. Is there discussion? Rhonda, I can't see the whole, there we go. Thank you. All right, no discussion that I'm seeing. So AR2 is before you. Are you ready to vote? I think so. If you would vote in favor, please raise your hand, big and forward. Thank you. All those opposed, if you would raise your hand. Thank you. And any abstentions, if you would raise your hand. All right, thank you. The voting is ended and we'll hear the result.
Laura and I concur, 18 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
All right, so AR2 is adopted and for recommendation to the annual conference. Thank you, Laura, for bringing that to us. We move now to AR4, and I believe Wendy Woodworth is the shepherd.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of AR4.
All right, this is before you. Is there second? It's not before you. Terry Watanabe seconds. So it's properly before you now. Is there discussion? Seeing no discuss, oh, I see Christy Darren, and then I see June Fothergill.
I just want to speak in favor of this because I think a lot of churches want to do this, but are needing a reminder and some guidance and encouragement.
Thank you. And I saw June. Oh, and then
Well,
Perry.
I just want to say that I like the idea of the church having a plan for the children. I also know that for many churches, number 2, having a Christian education program is not something they're going to be able to do very quickly. You find out who's coming maybe in April, maybe in March if you're lucky, and then you suddenly have to come up with a Christian education program before the end of June. I know there's a variety of things there, I just want to make sure that churches know it is a plan that they will work with the pastor on. It may not happen as quickly as pastors would like. I just know the reality of this. I've lived it my whole career. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Then I see Laura, well, I saw Terry first and then Laura.
Thank you, Bishop. I just, again, have the question about line 35, whether there is an attached worksheet that belongs with this request.
Who can answer that for us?
I can address that, Bishop. We worked with Heather prior to the finalization of the legislative packet and confirmed that the content in the attachment is in the action request. What we didn't do is catch every reference to the attachment. So all of that content is properly before us.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Terry? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I see Laura Baville.
So to answer June's question, in the content of the action request in line 21 and 22, it says very specifically that churches can choose to partner with a neighborhood mainline denomination to coordinate Sunday school or youth group with the clergy person in the process of that. And so by no means, I don't think in the spirit of this action request, does it require a congregation to magically make a Sunday school appear, but recognizes that sometimes smaller churches might need to partner with area mainline denominations so that they can care for their PKs.
Thank you. I see Mark Bateman and Warren Light. So not at the same time, Mark. Yes, please go ahead.
If I understood the comment about line 35 correctly, all the content is here. Would it be appropriate for me to move that we strike line 35?
Not having been the one that had the conversation, let me turn back to Adam about that.
Yes, no content will disappear as a result. So.
I move that we strike line 35.
So let me ask if by common consent we can strike line 35. Would anyone stand outside a consensus to strike line 35? Carol has her hand up. Carol, are you objecting to striking it?
I think Carol might be frozen.
She may be frozen. All right.
So she's just voting for everything now. Oh,
no, Carol, you were frozen there for a minute. Your hand was up. So I'm not sure if you were wanting to speak to this or if you were speaking to Mark's motion to strike line 35. Or not a motion, but we were testing a consensus to strike line 35.
Internet issues. No, I was not speaking against consensus.
Okay, thank you. You know, we're having a little trouble hearing you. It may be, you may have better luck getting your message out if you chat, if the signal is poor. So if we're having trouble again, I'll let you know and you can maybe put your comment in chat. All right, let me ask one more time. Is there anyone that stands outside consensus to strike line 35? I don't see any, so we're going to do that, and Adam's going to figure out how to report that out. And I see then, thank you, Mark, for that, by the way, Warren Light. Oh, you're muted, Warren.
Sorry. I wanted to address 35, but the other thing, it's a small matter, but it does send the wrong message, I think. The word pastor is capitalized all over, and it should not be capitalized. It's just, a common word, pastor, and I'm asking if we could have consensus also to make that a little p.
Only if you also will not capitalize district superintendent.
That's fine for me, but I don't know if that's a proper title. But pastor is not.
If we said district superintendent Tucker, it should
There
be
you go.
capitalized.
There you go.
But if it's a generic district superintendent, it's not capitalized.
There you go.
Same with bishop, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed.
Okay. Can we, by common consent, take the capitalization off of those designations? I see no objection, so we'll do that as well. Thank you. Laura, was that, are we doing this in a way that you can clean this up for us?
Works for me.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, then I saw Carol. Carol, I'm not sure. I think you had your hand up on this, but this may have been from another time as well. And then I see Wendy. Carol, did you want to speak? I think I see her eyes blinking.
I'll try. I may need to move. My concern is that perhaps this needs to be more like the safe sanctuary. It's an expectation that I feel we need for every child who enters a church, that to have different expectations for the children of pastors versus any child coming into our churches today seems to me to be wrong, that churches need to have a preparation for everyone, and it gets overlooked.
Thank you for that. So I didn't hear that as a speech against, but I did hear it as, let's consider this step one towards a more comprehensive approach to children's ministry. Thank you. Wendy?
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. I would recommend, or I'm going to get called out of order if I don't do this right, like I did last year. I would like to offer an amendment.
Yes, what is your amendment?
Line 31 and 33, I would like to change the date to say to have a plan in place by September 1st in consultation with the pastor. And then I can speak to that.
So what you're saying is in both places, strike July 1st.
Yes.
And add the word September 1st in consultation with the pastor.
Yes.
Not capitalized.
Yep, I'm not the grammar police.
All right.
So my thinking around that is.
Let me ask for a second, Wendy. Is there a second to Wendy's amendment? I see Paul Nichols seconding, so now you may speak.
Yeah, I'm supportive of doing everything we can to support clergy and their families and their kids. I'm a little worried about a church working on this policy before they've really engaged in any relationship with the pastor, and feel like they need to hear what the pastor's needs are in order to create a policy together. So that's why I'd like those 2 months to create that together.
All right, thank you. I see June Fothergill.
Wendy, I like that idea, except that it says that the person will not work until the policy is in place. I think we need to change that as well if we're going to do that.
Yes.
So the way to do that is for someone either to offer an amendment to the amendment. I see Mariano Estrada. Mariano?
Yeah, I was not going to offer the amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
Rather, I wanted to note that July 1st is also stated on lines 58 and 60.
Thank you. So let me turn back to Wendy and ask, I wonder if we want to just hold this for a moment. We're going to have a break before too terribly long. It would give Wendy and maybe another person or two a chance to kind of text each other or even ask for a breakout room during the break to do a little bit of work on this and bring it back to us. What's your pleasure, Wendy? We can push forward.
I'm happy to work with somebody to perfect the amendment to make it work. So yeah, if somebody volunteers to work with me.
I'll put you in a breakout room. This is Kristen. When we hit the break time, okay? Whoever wants to go into that room, I'll assign you there.
So let me suggest that anybody that would like to work on this, do a private chat to Wendy, volunteering to do that. And Wendy, at the break, help me remember that we're going to identify who's going to work on this and make sure you have a breakout room. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to hold on that, and I need to not forget it. Move to AR. So we're deferring action on number 4 by common consent. It's sweet to have a group this size, and if I'm misusing the common consent piece, let me know. I don't want to silence any voices or move in a direction that the body doesn't want to move. But on the other hand, if we can do it simply and easily, it saves us time and makes the process cleaner and easier, actually. So let's move to AR5. I believe Paul Nickel is our shepherd.
Yes, Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of action request number 5, which is titled Call for a Jurisdictional Episcopacy Study Committee. It's a mouthful.
All right, is there a second? I see Sarah Richards seconding. So it is properly before us. Paul, would you like to speak to it? Or not Paul? Who would like to speak to it?
Is Jeremy with us? He spoke so eloquently yesterday about it. This is one only needs to turn to lines 87 through 89 to understand what this is about. This will create an ad hoc jurisdictional committee to study the feasibility and viability of a different structure for Episcopal leadership by drawing out some administrative functions and freeing a bishop to provide visionary and specialized leadership. This supports the work of a jurisdictional committee that has been working on this topic for several months now, and simply extends that work.
Thank you. So the floor is open for discussion. There's quite a bit of discussion last evening, but are we comfortable? Are you ready to vote? All right.
Bishop, could I ask a procedural question?
Yes.
I believe I understood from Adam that Jeremy was possibly going to do some editorial cleanup on both these action requests. Do you have any information, Adam, about whether that's still the intent, or if Jeremy's fine with us voting as is?
I imagine Jeremy would be fine taking a vote. He is willing to do some additional work on AR5 and AR6 and have these action requests come back to the Assembly on June 15th. But that's up to this body to decide if they'd like to give Jeremy more time to work on these items or not, if they want to deal with them now.
All right. I see Wendy Woodworth.
Yeah, I'm very, as one who has been working with the different Western jurisdiction task groups on this question, I'm happy to have more voices be part of this. I'm not sure if I missed in the legislation who's going to form this committee. I saw it said it wants the approval of first elects to general conference, but I'm not sure it's clear who's forming the committee.
Does anyone have an answer to that question?
I believe at one point it says that the author of this action request would do so. I'm scanning quickly. Yeah, in line 77 to 81, there is a provision that if this does not occur by a certain date, that it will be convened by a committee that is chaired by this petition author, that being Jeremy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So I heard a question, but I don't hear anyone asking to defer action from further work. Is that correct? You ready to vote? Terry?
I actually appreciate the distinction for delaying it, just in order for it to be cleaned up as Laura had suggested, so that it's very clear at the top what the action of both of these are, rather than have it buried within the text. But that's the editor in me speaking.
So that's Terry making a speech in favor of a motion that isn't before us. So I wonder if there is someone that wants to make a motion to defer action until the June meeting.
Can I make that motion?
Well, not after you speak to it, but
Since I'm the shepherd, I would propose that we defer this until the June 15 meeting.
Okay. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Terry, you can second. I see Funga though. I saw Funga's hand sooner. So Fungale has seconded it. Thank you. So this is the motion to defer is before you. And I don't think that that's debatable, but it might be. But let's see, let's test the body. Are you ready to defer? If you would defer this until the June meeting of the Legislative Assembly so that it can be refined, would you please lift your hand? All right, those, any opposed to deferral? All right, abstentions? Thank you. We await the vote, the outcome.
Laura and I count 18 in favor of deferral, 1 opposed, no abstaining.
All right, so it is deferred, and we will expect to see it back in some form or another in June. Thank you very much. We turn now to request number 6. The shepherd is Sarah Richards.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop, I move that Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of action request number 6, titled Call for an Episcopacy Transitional Class.
All right, is there a second? I see a second. Terry Watanabe seconded. It's properly before you. Is there discussion? I see Paul Nickel, Mark Bateman. Okay, Paul.
I move that this be deferred to the June 15th meeting.
All right, you hear that motion. Is there a second? I see Sarah Richards seconding. Mark, let me ask you, are you willing to have us go to the vote on deferral?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to proceed to vote on deferral. If you would defer this until the June Legislative Assembly, would you please lift your hand? All right, those opposed? All right, any abstentions? Thank you. We'll wait the results.
Laura, I caught a second abstention, so I'm at 17 in favor, 1 opposed, 2 abstaining.
All right, thank you. So this also has been deferred until June, and we can look forward to considering it then. Thank you very much. We are at action request number 8. This is the last of the action requests. We'll have a break when we're finished with this. And I believe that, gosh, I have Tilly Makepeace as the shepherd, and I don't believe Tilly is here. So is there a backup shepherd, Adam?
I don't have one previously noted, but we could ask Christy Darren if she'd do us the honor.
I'd be honored to. Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of action request number 8, new ministerial education fund policy.
All right, this is moved. Is there a second? I see Sharon seconding. Thank you very much. So it's properly before you. Is there discussion? Seeing, oh, I see Christy.
I support this as they are recognizing, Boom is recognizing the changing landscape of our church leaders and the fact that we are bringing in more and more lay leadership, as well as those headed towards licensed local pastors, those who may not have taken the same channels, but are being called to serve. And I'm in support of this because it supports them.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I see none, so I think we're ready to vote. If you would support recommending AR 8 to the annual conference, please lift your hand. All right, those opposed, lift your hand. Any abstentions? All right, we await the results.
Bishop, we count 19 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstaining.
Thank you very much. So action request number 8 is approved for recommendation to the annual conference. And friends, that completes the action requests that have been submitted, except those that we have deferred until June. So you should all, I really love the giant hands in front of the screen. Now I can't do that because my camera's a long way away, but just do it kind of a, yay, we made it through this, close to the camera, good, good, good. And we will take 10 minutes and come back at 1:15 to resume. Good work, friends.
I'm going to ask, is there anyone in here that needs to go into a breakout room?
Kristen, I was wondering if we should do that to try to solve the access issue.
Okay, hang on one second.
There's a few people who told me they were interested in working on this.
Okay. I'm going to create a breakout room for, this was for which, remind me, legislation?
Children, families, clergy,
Okay.
kids.
AR4, okay. So,
So it's Laura Beville, Paul Nickel, and June Fothergill.
okay, so I'm going to assign Laura, Wendy, I'm putting you there, and who?
Paul Nickel, Laura Beville, June Fothergill.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me. I actually forgot. It's awful.
There you go.
So Kristen, I think you and I and Lori could talk about the access issue.
And, okay. All right.
Hi, Adam.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes.
How are you?
Good. Is there anything I need to be caught up on?
Let me see here. A reminder that we are, of course, broadcasting live.
Yes.
And thank you for exiting the screen share, whoever did that. Don't think I have you as a shepherd. Is that your understanding also? Are you expecting?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good. Let's see, I don't see you on the list. We have done work on action requests, and we are going to be circling back to AR4 at some point. And we've moved AR7 to the end of our work today. So that'll be the last legislation we address. But otherwise, it's the SRs that remain for us. The SRs remain.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Christy, thank you for jumping in to shepherd on the spot like that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
They're still talking about.
Oh, are they still? I think we're at time, but we've got a breakout group that's thinking about, which one is it? Thinking about, sorry, which one are you thinking about?
AR4.
Thank you. Oh, I marked it. Is it possible to drop a note into the breakout room?
We're all back.
No, Wendy's not here. Who went with her?
She needed to take a short break.
Okay,
because of
we'll just give it a couple more minutes. Is Wendy the only one we're missing? I'm not keeping track very well. Oh, she's back. Thank you. All right. So I guess maybe I should ask if we're ready to come back to AR4. Or are you going to want, you are? Okay. Then let's turn to AR4 again and hear what the working group has to offer.
Okay. So here is the amendment we would like to lift up. Starting in line 29, during the consultation process, the DS would ensure that the leadership of the church receives notice of this policy and require that the church, in consultation with the pastor, complete their plan before September 1st, period. We then would delete that remaining, the next sentence. And then this same amendment would need to be done down in lines 56 through 60, which is a repeat of those two sentences.
Procedural issue.
Before you do that, can you say again where the second change is?
Lines 56 through 60.
Thank you. So, Laura, you want to bring your procedural issue before we have a second?
You can second.
Okay. So, Wendy, are you making this motion?
Yes, Bishop.
Okay, and then is there a second? I see June and Laura both. June Fothergill seconding.
There was a request to put the language in the chat.
Okay.
Is that possible for them?
So Rondelli report says a request to put the amended language in the chat, maybe as it would read.
This is very similar to my request. Since it didn't really start out as a motion, so I really need it clear as a motion with exactly what's to be changed. That's part one. Part two is that if I'm remembering right, and I haven't had time to go back to that document, I think that lines 57, 58 isn't that actually in the supporting information? Adam's nodding. So we don't have, as an assembly, we don't have the authority to change that.
All right, so let's go back to Wendy. Warren Light, who has led this process for so long, is clapping that we're getting process right. Thank you. All right, the group holds a lot of wisdom in it, and if we just mine the group for all the wisdom that's here, we might get through this. So Wendy, let's go back and let me ask you again for a motion.
You know, just an aside, I have this memory of going through church conferences and explaining why Robert's rules are so inaccessible. And I use myself as an example, and I could do it again this year. Okay.
What? No, Wendy.
I'm ready, Bishop. I'm ready.
You're way too hard on yourself. None of us remember you being ruled out of order except you.
What made a good story at church conferences?
All right.
Okay. Yes, Bishop. I'm ready. I don't even know how to, I move the following amendment. Oh, where am I? Okay. So line 30 would read, require that the church complete in consultation with the pastor their plan before July 1st, period. I move striking the sentence, if the church fails to complete their plan, the pastor will not begin work, and so on to the end of that sentence.
Okay. So
then that needs repeated, same amendments for lines 56 through 60.
What we just heard.
Wait,
hold on. Wait, June. Wait. What we just heard was that we don't need the supporting material is not available for amendment. That's just information. So we don't need to fix that.
Okay, cool.
So I want to make sure, June, that I understand Wendy's motion. The motion is to amend by adding in line 29, no, 30, in line 30, after complete, the words "in consultation with the pastor." And
Yes.
to strike the second sentence, the next sentence.
And change the date to by September 1st.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. All right, June.
I just wanted to remind Wendy it was September 1st. She said July in her statement.
Okay, okay.
I did,
All right.
but I wrote September 1st.
Yes, you did.
So Laura, do you have the motion now, the amendment now?
I think I have it enough. I'm still working on getting it on paper in a way that makes sense. So if somebody asked me to read it right now, I couldn't, but I think I've got the basic of it.
And June, is your second still good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's have discussion. And before we vote, we're going to make sure we have that Laura has the words, the technical version of the amendment ready for us. Is there discussion? I see none. So Laura, I think we're waiting on you. Is that right? Good.
Okay, what would be helpful is, so I've now got that exact paragraph there, except those dumb line numbers come in when I copy it. And I just want to make sure I've got exactly what we're looking at here. During the consultation process, the DS would ensure that the leadership of the church receives notice of this policy and require that the church complete in consultation with the pastor. But we need so complete their plan, right? So the new words go, okay. So what you're trying to do is omit the words before July 1 and replace with the words in completion with the pastor before September 1st.
In consultation.
Right, sorry, yes. Before September 1. And strike the whole next sentence. Okay.
So why don't you try, as soon as you're comfortable, try reading it again just as it would read. And those of you that worked on it, listen carefully and make sure that it reflects your work.
Okay, so that paragraph in the action request would read, during the consultation process, the district superintendent would ensure that the leadership of the church receives notice of this policy and require that the church complete their plan in consultation with the pastor before September 1st, period.
That's correct.
I see thumbs up. Okay.
Okay, so that's the motion we're going to vote on that amendment first, and then we'll come back and vote on the document as amended or not amended. All right, so the amendment is before you. Is there discussion of the amendment? Do you want to say a word about it, Wendy? And then I see Mark.
I just think this helps create a relationship between the pastor and the staff parish committee, talking about the needs of their family and their children. It gives some space to do that. And it removes this, I think, could be very negative thing about, I'm not going to preach until we get this worked out, which doesn't seem like a good way to start out a relationship with the church.
Thank you. Mark.
So I am in favor of the change, but I want to take this opportunity to flag what I think sometimes ends up being a very confusing output from the Legislative Assembly when we do not edit the supporting statements, because we are about to have a situation where the text of the resolution has one date and the supporting statement has a different date. I understand we as a Legislative Assembly don't want to get into wordsmithing supporting statements as a general policy, but to never edit anything in the supporting statement, I think lends to confusion at the annual conference.
Thank you for that. So let me ask this. Since it isn't part of the official action, could we, as friendly people, authorize Wendy and her working group to edit that paragraph appropriately for presentation to the annual conference? Would that do what you want, Mark? Mark disappeared. Oh, no, I see him. Boy, people are hopping around on the screen. Okay, so if that's agreeable, let's just ask, and Wendy, are you willing to take that on with your team to just, probably you did that work and we just said we can't amend that. So if you would include the change that you made to lines 54 through 60, if you would get that to Laura, that's what we'll take to the annual conference session.
That sounds good, Bishop. I think Laura can just cut and paste the one into the other because it's exactly the same. But yes, we will accomplish that.
Thank you. Adam?
There's a very reasonable suggestion in the chat that we might collaborate with the original author of the legislation.
Yes and no, right? Because we are changing the substance. I mean, we just adopted an amendment that changes substantially the content of the original AR. So I don't have a problem with consulting, but I think the body that we need to, whose sensibility we need to forward is this body's, not the original maker.
I see Warren Light's got a hand up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have something. Hold on, I've just got
sorry.
the chat is up. Can you? So I'm going to listen to Warren and then we'll go to Laura.
Just really quickly, the whole idea about not changing the supporting information, because we changed things that the author writes. We change the actual amendments. We actually make amendments to what they write. The whole idea is so that we don't go down rabbit holes going into the justification. I think this idea of just changing the dates to fit makes sense. And it doesn't violate anything that we've done in the past. The idea is that we would at least double our work if we went through all the justifications for each piece of legislation and wordsmithed them. That's the only thing. So I don't know why you would need to consult on this, because you're already changing the material. That's my opinion. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it becomes the property of this body, and anybody can talk to. I mean, any of you that are gonna make this final edit of this and get it to Laura Jacob Bartlett can have a conversation with Heather if you want to, but the important thing is what was the will of this body. Thanks for that clarification, Warren. All right, so Wendy, you're willing to pick this up and make sure that I mean, it sounds like it is a pretty easy, this particular one is a pretty easy cut and paste, so.
Yes, Bishop.
All right, thank you. Excellent work, Wendy Woodworth. You are a fine and accomplished legislator. And my old therapist would have said, okay, you just open this little envelope in your heart and you put that in there and carry it around with you whenever you feel like. All right. Good work, friends. Thank you for that. We are moving now to the
Bishop, I don't think we actually voted.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. All right, so we have the amendment before us. Laura, would you read it one more time, the way it will read as amended?
So what I've put into Wendy's mouth at this point is Wendy moved to amend by changing lines 29 to 33 as follows. During the consultation process, the district superintendent would ensure that the leadership of the church receives notice of this policy and require that the church complete their plan, strike July 31, in consultation with the pastor before September 1, strike the following sentence.
Thank you. So that is how it would read if we adopt this amendment. Is there discussion? I see none. And so if you would support this amendment, please lift your hand. All right, hands down. Those who oppose, lift your hand. All right, any abstentions? We'll await the results.
21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
All right. See what a good job that little working group did over the break. Excellent. And lots of help from Mark and Warren and everyone. Good work. All right, now we are turning to the standing resolutions that are before us. We'll begin with standing resolution 1.
Bishop?
Yes?
Laura?
Yeah, I'm sure we're saying the same thing, Adam. We need to return to the main motion as amended on AR4.
Oh, thank you. Oh my. Thank you. Not ready to turn to standing resolutions yet. So AR4 as amended is before you, and I see a note. Let's see. All right, so Steve Mitchell had a comment, and that will be appropriate in the discussion of the entire action request now. So action request number 4 as amended is before us. Is there discussion? And Steve, I'm going to ask you if you want to make your comment out loud.
Part of me feels like I'm being sour grapes because the intent, I think, is well meant, but it does seem to me like it's self-serving for the clergy. We should be concerned about all the children of the churches and the communities, not just the clergy's children. And in some of the communities that I've served, there is no other mainline denomination that has any more of a Christian education program for their children than the churches I've been in. And I just think it's better left to hold up our covenant to care for all of our disciples. So I guess I'm speaking against this, but I understand and affirm the idea.
Thank you, Steve. And we had some comment along those lines earlier as well. Is there further discussion? Paul Nickel?
I was in the working group, and we raised a similar concern as Steve just raised. There's a kind of a specificity to this proposal that almost seems unnecessary. Of course, the relationship between a new pastor and the staff parish or pastor-parish relations committee should include things like this, but this should also include things like the needs of the pastor's health or their perhaps a marital situation, or if it's a joint appointment. There are all kinds of things that we could lay out in great detail. But we have just a little bit of nervousness about being so specific. I plan to abstain on this.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Paul, you can take your hand down. Wendy, did you want to say a word?
Yes, Bishop. So I do appreciate the spirit of this legislation. I think my concern is, as I look specifically at point number 3 about, which seems to talk about the pastor's work life. For me, a pastor has all kinds of needs related to their work life and balancing that with family. That could be balancing it with because they have young children, because they have aging parents, because maybe they have some personal health matters themselves that require them to balance evening meetings and making sure they use their vacations. So I find myself hesitant here because my ideal would be that there is an ethic that pastors and SPRCs talk about their work-life schedule in balance with all of these other things and come to some agreement about how they live that covenant out together. So that's my bigger picture concern about this. And I'm not sure what to do with that.
Thank you. Yes, Brenda? And then Christy?
What to do with that? It would be, I'm in agreement with Wendy. It's like using scattershot for something that could be addressed with individual churches through mediation if there's an issue.
Thank you. And Christy? And then June?
I appreciate that this broadens the conversation about clergy, family, health. What I'm hearing in Heather's original message is a lot of times clergy show up with family and the church doesn't have anything and they expect the clergy to build the program for which their kids can participate. So I'm supporting the essence of let's be intentional that the church have something in place or be willing to work on a plan and not just expect the pastor to do it all, including pastor and nurture their own children to the baptismal vows.
Thank you, June.
Yeah, I think that I like the idea of asking the church to think about the issue of how to deal with children coming into the church. And pastors' kids are in a unique situation because they often have to come whether they want to or not at first, especially. And also sometimes spouses are not available in the way maybe the church thinks they should. There's all kinds of issues that I think it's good to have the conversation. And I think the conversation about kids and how we deal with our kids could lead to those other conversations that Wendy's talking about. It's almost like it's just beginning to say we can talk about these things. And I think it's a good idea for churches to think about it. It might have been very helpful in my career over the years to have had those conversations in a way that maybe not just initiated by me, but with the support of the DS and the conference.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? All right, I think you're ready to vote. So if you would adopt AR4 as amended, please lift your hand. All right, those opposed? Abstentions? All right, we await the result. Oh, you're muted, Adam.
Thank you so much. Bishop, Laura, I count 8 in favor, 7 opposed, and 5 abstentions.
So we will send this forward. This is another place, though, where more conversation is probably appropriate. And I think especially conversation between district superintendents and the Board of Ordained Ministry, just to talk about, well, how do we, in a holistic way, work with congregations and pastors on what are complicated relationships. And let's admit it, back in the day, nobody expected the pastor to have childcare responsibilities. We are still learning what it means to be holistic human beings outside of very traditional gender role definitions in ministry today. And it's congregations often have expectations from a previous century about these things. So in a variety of ways, not only about children, but about a variety of things. And so I think this is a fruitful and timely conversation to engage in. And I trust that we'll not lose this. John and Wendy, make sure you bring this back to the cabinet conversation as well. Okay? Thank you. Are we ready now to turn to the standing resolutions? Adam, I need your help.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Standing Resolution 1. Mariano Estrada, we're really glad to have you here, Mariano. Appreciate your presence and hope that, you know, outside of being in a room where you can kind of turn to the person next to you and get a sense of something that may be mystifying you, hope that you're feeling welcomed and fully a part of this group. And we turn to you as the shepherd of Resolution 1, Standing Resolution 1.
Thank you, Bishop. It's great to be here. I recommend that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution number 1, aligning investments with values regarding Palestine and Israel.
Thank you. Is there a second? Warren Light seconded. Thank you very much, Warren. Anything to move the process. So Standing Resolution 1 is before you. Is there discussion? All right, I don't see any request for discussion, so I think that means you're ready to vote. If you would support Standing Resolution 1, please lift your hand. All right, those opposed? All right, abstentions? What are the results? Oh, I saw another hand come up. So let's take abstentions one more time. Thank you. Results?
Thanks, Bishop. Thank you, Laura. I have 18 in favor, 1 opposed, 2 abstentions.
Right, so Standing Resolution 1 is recommended to the annual conference. Thank you. We turn now to SR2, and I believe, Steve Mitchell, you are the shepherd for this.
Yes, Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution 2, affirming and celebrating all transgender children of God. And this is a proposal for a new standing resolution.
And I'm just going to check myself. Adam, am I correct that a new standing resolution requires a 2/3 vote?
Definitely requires a 2/3 vote of the annual conference.
Of the annual conference, okay, but not of the Legislative Assembly.
Yeah, for us, the question will be, does it, well, and a new one isn't eligible for the consent calendar anyways, so.
Okay. So this is before you, so there's discussion. Seeing none, you ready to vote? If you would approve SR2 for recommendation to the annual conference, please lift your hand. All right, those opposed? Now, I think Carol's hand is frozen.
I concur, Bishop.
Any abstentions? We got you, Carol. Thank you. Do we have results?
21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Turning now to SR3, and Warren Light, you are shepherding this.
Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution number SR3, supporting disaffiliation for the cause of full inclusion. This is also a new standing resolution.
All right, is there a second? Terry Watanabe seconds. It's before you. Is there discussion? Terry?
I would like to speak against adopting this standing resolution. I'm concerned about some of the language that is not as optimistic as I like to be about how to amend our book of discipline. I also think that this is something that we are already supporting as a conference, and it feels redundant to legislate language around this.
Thank you. So I see Steve Mitchell's hand.
Hello. I speak against also. I don't think it's the mission of the annual conference to support churches leaving it. I do understand we want to be understanding of the desire of some that are sick and tired of the battle and want to go their own way, but it's not our mission to support their disaffiliation.
Thank you. Those are 2 speeches against. Is there a speech in favor? All right, are you ready? Is there any other speech against? Don't want to shut this down. Paul?
This will seem odd coming from me, but I also oppose this measure for the reasons that Terry has stated. It's not as optimistic as I believe reality would suggest, and I believe that we are already on the record on this issue.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we'll move to the vote. Those who would adopt standing resolution number 3 to recommend to the annual conference, lift your hand. Those opposed, same sign. We got you, Carol. Thanks for confirming in the chat. We appreciate the difficulty you're working with. All right, any abstentions? Results?
Bishop, the results are 2 in favor, 19 opposed, 0 abstentions.
All right, we will not be forwarding, recommending Resolution 3 to the annual conference. Thank you very much. These are hard things, aren't they? These are issues of strategy. How do we move in the direction that the conference has been pursuing for many years? Do we do it this way? Do we do it that way? We're moving now to SR number 4, and my notes say that Ted Myers was going to present this, but I don't think Ted is with us. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I would just add that Ted and many of us on the leadership team have been trying valiantly to get him in. It's a long story. He is on the live stream and is in contact with us and will let us know if he has a comment. But yes, you're correct. He's not here on the Zoom, and so we'll need someone else to shepherd this.
I think I saw Kristen with a comment.
No, never mind, Bishop.
Okay.
Well, Christy Deeren has been such a wonderful emergency shepherd.
I can shepherd again. Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution number 4, Call to Civility, which is a renewal of an existing standing resolution.
All right, is there a second? I see, let's see. I'm going to give this one to Mariano. I'm going to spread it around. Thank you. And thank you, Christy, for stepping in.
You're welcome.
It's like every pastor should have a prayer on the tip of their tongue, and every legislative assembly member should be ready to offer a motion. What were you going to say, Christy?
I have a question about some of these SRs. Is that this is all nice and everything, but where does the action come behind it? And is that if there's a group that wants to bring action to it, does it get couched into the SR, or is that, where does that come?
You know, in some ways that might have been, you might have gotten an answer better last night when the presenter of the motion was here. So I don't know if there's anybody that can respond to your question, but let's see if somebody has a response.
I just share, Bishop, if I might, that generally SRs tend to be expressions of the values of the conference or proposals to express the values of the conference. And then it's very contextual SR to SR, whether those with a passion for it have some plan for actualization. But I think our hope is that we would consider these as whether they are authentic expressions of our values or not.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Oh, Warren. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I propose an amendment. I'll put it in the chat here. If you look at line 18 to 19, it says, further, every United Methodist is called upon to respond with radical compassion and civility to those persons and media who promote hate, fear, misinformation, and lies. And then it has a period. I would turn that into a comma and add these words: while remaining steadfast in compassionate solidarity with persons and communities targeted by hate, fear, and misinformation. That's the amendment I propose.
Okay, and you've put that in the chat. So Laura, you have that language?
I'm sorry, hold on.
I think it's coming. I don't have it yet. Oh, there it
yeah,
is.
sorry.
That's all right. What? Okay. I want to make sure everybody's seen the language. And I'm going to have to get a second here. Mark, are you seconding or are you wanting to discuss? I don't know what that meant.
Sure, happy to second, but also have a question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So it's moved and seconded, and maybe I think you can all access that language in the chat if I'm not mistaken. So let me ask first if Warren wants to speak to his motion.
Yeah, we've been here. Isabel and I have been in this conference for, I guess, about 17 years, and it's been a mostly wonderful experience. But in terms of working with students who are from targeted communities, and also dealing with that in our own family, I find that that the culture of our communities is one where we really do want to make peace a lot of times with other white privileged folks, even who say hateful things because they're members of people's families, etc. But there is a forgetting of and a turning away from people who are targeted. And I think that I could not vote for this the way that it's written now, but with the amendment, I'd feel okay. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Mark?
So I think, especially given Warren's comment, I think what I'm about to ask for is a ruling from you, Bishop, whether this change would move it from minor revision to major revision and therefore new standing resolution instead of renewal.
That seems like a substantive change to me. So probably would shift that. Let me check with Adam, who has, and probably with Warren too, who have worked this process much longer than I have. Adam, is it your sense that this would move it into a substantial revision? And Warren, is that also your sense? All right. So with that understanding, this motion is before you and has been seconded. Mark, did you want to speak?
No, thank you, Bishop.
Okay. Is there discussion? Mike.
Thank you. This is my first time attending Legislative Assembly, so I hope I'm putting this in the right place. I really like Warren's proposed amendment. I also think in those same lines, there needs to be a teasing apart of persons and media. Media is not really something you can show compassion toward, though the persons who use it, you know, you could. So I think there's some more nuance here that could go into a major rewrite of the resolution.
So let me ask you, Mike, that's a helpful comment. We could just take it as a comment and move on and adopt this or reject it. Or we could pause. If you wanted to propose, we could pause and take another break. It's another break time coming up right away. And invite a writing team to do some more work. Or pause and invite a writing team to do some work and bring it back in June. There's some options here, and I want just you to be aware of what your options might be. Do you simply want to have made a comment, or do you want to ask for, let's see, Warren Light says, I agree with Mark, we'd be happy to work on the media issue.
I would also be happy to be a part of a writing team.
So do you think this is the kind of thing that we could do quickly in a break, or that you'd like until June to continue to work on it?
I rewrote it last night, so I have a proposed result. Yeah.
So just for the future, don't feel criticized by this comment, but in the future, the preferred sequence is to offer the motion first and
Okay.
then speak to it. But let me ask the body if you would allow Mike to make his motion after having spoken. I see some nodding heads. All right. Mike, why don't you try your motion?
Bishop, we're in the middle of an amendment. So the question is this an amendment to the amendment or a substitute, or what would it be?
That's a great question. Let's hear it. Oh, let's ask Mike. Does this so Mike, I'm going to ask you, would it detract from what you're trying to do if we acted on the light amendment first?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for that helpful correction. So the light amendment is before us, which addresses solidarity with targeted communities. That's not actually the language, but that I think was the spirit. So that amendment is before us. Is there further discussion of that amendment?
See Terry's hand.
See Terry, thank you.
A question, is it possible to table the discussion of the amendment until we see further text? And the reason I say that is because I don't want to act on something that may be moot in a rewrite.
Okay. What I think, I would prefer that we simply defer to action if we could do that. It's a little bit simpler than tabling, but does the same thing for our purposes here. It makes it easier to bring it back. So let me ask, is there, I think Terry's asking, could we defer action on this entire matter, understanding that there's an amendment on the floor that we would bring back first, but could we defer action on the table? Do you want to defer action on the table, on the amendment that's before us, and have all of it before us at once? Or, well, let me just ask that. Do you want to defer action on the amendment, or do you want to go ahead and act on the amendment? How many of you, just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, how many would prefer to act on the amendment that's before us? How many would prefer that we defer action? Just thumb up if you prefer that we act. Thumbs down if you prefer that we defer. Oh, we're undecided. Okay, here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest that we act on the amendment before us. We don't want to get tied up in a complicated parliamentary situation. So let's act on this. Nothing stops a new amendment from coming in that would change what we adopt right now if we adopt an amendment right now. So let's go ahead and act on the amendment that's before us. And Laura, we've kind of gone around the barn a couple of times. So can you remind us of what's before us?
Yes, Warren moved to amend line 19 by turning the period at the end of the sentence into a comma and adding these words, while remaining steadfast in compassionate solidarity with persons and communities targeted by hate, fear, and misinformation, period.
Okay, that's what's before us. And that, I believe, has been seconded. Is that correct, Laura?
Yes.
So is there further discussion of the light amendment? Seeing none, let's act on the light amendment. If you would approve the light amendment, please lift your hand. We see Carol is frozen, but has sent in her text or her chat. Positive vote, yes vote. Thank you. Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Bishop, it's
Go ahead.
21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstained.
All right. So with that, then we're back to Mike Connor has a motion that he'd like to bring. So I give you the floor, Mike. Present your amendment.
Can you help me form? Am I proposing that we take a moment to?
Well, I'm not sure what form it's in, so maybe would it be helpful to take a break, to have you and Warren and maybe Mark or a couple of other people put their heads together and see what you've got and what the best way to present it is?
That would be helpful to me if others were willing.
Okay. So Mark's got his thumb up and Warren does. Does anybody else want to work with them for a few minutes?
I see Mariano wants to.
Mariano? So can we set up a breakout group room for them?
Yes, Bishop, I'm doing that right now on the other room 3.
If anybody else wants to join, you can put your desire in the chat and we'll try and include you in that breakout room. And let me just say, we're doing very well. We don't need to feel anxious about the time at this point. So I'm going to suggest that we take, because this may take some time, I'm going to suggest that we take till 20 minutes until 10:30, 10:20 Pacific time, which is 11:30 Mountain Time. And the rest of us will take a deep breath, maybe go outside and breathe fresh air, although we've got the fresh air in the room here, and pray for you as you're doing this work. Pray for those affected by this, that this legislation is tending and mindful of. All right, we'll be back at 1:30. Welcome back, friends. So Warren says that you just sent that, didn't you? That a new form is coming. And is that going to come into the chat, Warren?
Mike is sending it to Laura so that she could bring up the whole document, but then also going to put it in the chat so that when we show our faces, people can refer to it as well. But that way, Laura has it intact, and he has a substitute motion. Now I'll shut up. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking, there's Laura. Let's see. Yeah, let's move Laura back. Yeah, right. So at least on my screen, I know where to look for her. So there's Laura, full screen. Do you have this document, and are you able to?
I'm sorry. I keep turning off my video because I'm trying to change the settings. Oh my goodness. I do have the document, and at whatever time in the future we may receive a motion dealing with this document, I would be happy to share it.
Okay, let me turn to Mike.
Thank you, Bishop. I move to substitute the language I provide for the language currently in Standing Resolution number 4.
So is this an entirely new, is this a substitution?
Yes.
Okay. So, Laura, can you put the new language up? And Mike, do you want to read it for us? Oops.
Trying to get a little bit bigger. There we go.
I'd be happy to read it.
Thank you.
In today's highly polarized cultural environment, dehumanization has become systemic, spreading corrosively like a cancer in our communities, our nation, and the body politic. As persons of Christian faith, it is our individual as well as corporate responsibility to call for and to embody the radical love reflective of the gospel values that unite us. Therefore, we call upon all United Methodists, clergy, and laity to act as agents of peace, open-mindedness, and mutual respect in the public sphere, both online and in person, while remaining steadfast in their compassionate solidarity with persons and communities targeted by hate, fear, and misinformation. Every United Methodist is called upon to respond with civility to those persons who promote hate, fear, and misinformation, and to abstain from or seek to hold accountable those media outlets which promote the same. We, the members of the Oregon-Idaho Conference, define civility as resisting dehumanization through truthful, persistent, and nonviolent engagement with others, which witnesses to the radical love of Christ. Civility is not an issue of ideology or political affiliation. It is a value at the core of our democracy as well as our faith.
All right, this is the language of the that's to be substituted that Mike has proposed. We substitute for the original motion that was submitted. Is there a second to the substitution? I see Sharon seconding. I see a number of hands seconding. Thank you very much. So just to be sure, clear about the process, the first thing we need to do is to discuss substituting this language for the other language. That will be the first action. And then we would adopt, it would be before us to adopt this language and recommend it to the annual conference. So Mike, would you like to speak to your motion to substitute?
Sure, yes. So in this substitution, I'm trying to nuance the difference between our posture toward people versus our posture toward media and make that clearer, while also thinking through the differences between civility and compassion. And as you saw, we incorporated Warren's earlier statement toward solidarity, that all of this happens within the context of our call to be in solidarity with those who are affected by hate.
All right, thank you. Is there further discussion? Warren puts in chat his note that he supports this substitution. Mariano?
Yeah, I do want to say, I think it's important to include that where we say, while remaining steadfast in compassionate solidarity with persons and communities targeted by hate, fear, and misinformation, I think that should be said to be both online and in person as well.
So that would be, I think you want to make a motion to amend,
The
substitute.
Yes.
So can we see the language again, Laura?
Yes, you can.
And Mariana, when this comes up, I'm probably not going to be able to see you. Maybe I am on one of my screens. Yeah, I am too. So can you show us, what I want to invite you to do is move an amendment, move to amend by adding, deleting.
Yeah, so I move to amend the substitution by moving the statement both online and in person to after fear and misinformation at the end of that sentence.
Okay, so right
to
there in the
strike
middle of
it,
the, I see. So the proposal is to move it from where it is now at the end of public sphere
yes,
to after the word misinformation.
yes.
Okay. So it applies to both parts of that sentence. Good, thank you.
Sorry.
Is it clear? So is there a second to Mariano's amendment? Christie seconds. And Mariano, I think you already spoke to it. Is there anything else you want to say?
Nope. That is all, Bishop.
So this is before you for discussion. And all we're discussing now is the amendment to the substitute. Mariano's amendment to the substitute. So I should call it the Estrada amendment. Terry.
So I would speak against this amendment because the verb act as agents, the both online and in person, is the modifier for that action. If you move it to the end, it's modifying what's closest to it, which is the fear and misinformation.
So we're going to need the language up again, Laura. I think you better leave it up there for a while. So say again, Terry, what your point is.
Sure. So by moving the both online and in person, what we're saying is we want to act as agents of peace, open-minded, mutual respect, both online and in person, and clarifying that we want it to act both online and in person. Moving it means that the action isn't both online and in person.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there further discussion?
Bishop, can I speak to this?
Yeah.
I think an elegant solution would be to duplicate the phrase online and in person, to make clear that the public sphere is both online and in person, and that we want to stand in solidarity both online and in person.
Okay, I
So
see Paul Nickel.
Yeah, I agree with Terry that this modifies the wrong part of the paragraph, and I support the original proposal.
All right, I got a crazy idea, and I'm out of my role now if I put this out here. So this is just me chatting with you. What if that phrase came after agents in the first line? Or of peace, agents of peace, both online and in person. Or no, act as agents, both online and in person, of peace, open-mindedness, mutual respect. Then it would modify both parts of the sentence.
This editor agrees.
What?
This editor agrees.
So does this editor want to make a motion? We have a motion actually, so.
Yeah, let's get a friendly emotion.
I'm going to say that this is good. This is important. It's important that we get it right. This level of editing is hard to do in a group, so we're going to hold on this again and come back to it later. Does anybody disagree to allow this to really come to fruition? You've done good work. We're going to do a little bit more good work and get there. Mark, are we okay with that? Mike, I'm sorry, I said Mark. Mike.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. Anybody outside that? So we'll defer action on this. We'll take another break at some point and give you a chance to put it together. And in the meantime, I'm sure some of you editors are gonna wordsmith around the edges and be ready. Be ready. You can even chat among yourselves as we continue to move forward. So we're gonna hold on SR4 again, but we're getting there. Moving then to SR5. Terry Watanabe, I think that you are the shepherd.
Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution number 5, titled Standing Up for Inclusion. This is a renewal of an existing standing resolution.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? I see Warren Light seconding. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, if you would support forwarding this recommendation to the annual conference, please lift your hand. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions?
Bishop, we have 21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
All right, so we will recommend that to the annual conference. Thank you very much. Moving on to SR6, and Christy Deeren, our veteran shepherd, is before us again.
Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of Standing Resolution number 6. We are UMC. This petition is a new standing resolution.
All right, is there a second? I see Mark Bateman seconding. Thank you. Standing resolution number 6 is before you for discussion. All right, if you're ready, if you would approve standing resolution number 6 for, oh, I see David Childress. Are you voting? Oh, okay. Jumping the gun, man, leading us into the fray. All who would support standing resolution number 6, please lift your hand.
I would just ask Carol if she can hear us to put a vote in the chat.
Thank you, Carol. All right, if you're opposed, please lift your hand. All abstentions? Do we have a result?
Sorry, the screen keeps shifting on me and I can't find Laura. There she is. Hi, Laura. Okay. I have 20 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 against, 0 abstaining.
Sorry, Adam, did you count Carol's vote?
I never saw Carol raise a hand and I don't see a vote.
She voted in chat.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I'm
my
sorry.
count was 21 and 0 and 0.
So it got a little buried in my chat there. 21-0-0. I concur. Yep.
And Carol, you apologized and there's no apology necessary. We are completely grateful to you for hanging in here and doing what you have to do to have your voice heard. So thank you for being here. All right. We are moving on then to standing resolution number 7, and Don Chesler is the shepherd for this. Welcome, Don. You're muted.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommend to the annual conference the adoption of the standing resolution number 7, advocating for comprehensive immigration policy reform. And this is a replacement of an existing standing resolution.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Warren has seconded. Thank you. We're getting there. So this is before you for discussion. Not seeing request for discussion. If you are ready, if you would support this, please lift your hand. And Carol, again, I'm not sure that we've got you, so if you might put your vote in the chat if you can. All right, those opposed, same sign. Abstentions?
Bishop, the vote is 21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
So I thought I saw Carol's vote negative, but maybe it was stuck there.
She first raised her hand when you were asking for the in favor votes. I think that Adam and I both saw that.
She sent, I direct messaged her about, it's okay, she's doing a good job. And she direct messaged me back, I vote to support.
Okay.
So I think it was supposed to be for everyone.
All right. Good. Thank you for that confirmation, Warren. And thank you, Carol, for struggling with the difficulties. Right. Warren's asking, and I was just going to propose a second breakout. So we have, I believe we have 2 items left to consider today. Standing Resolution 4, and then going back to AR7, right? Which we were holding to the end of the day. So with that in mind, I'm going to suggest that we take, what do you think, Warren, 10 minutes? 10 minutes? All right, so we'll come back at like 2 minutes past the hour.
You just need to know who wants to go into the breakout room.
Oh, thank you.
For SR4.
I see Paul Nickel, I see Mariano, I see Mike, I see Warren. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see you back.
We still need a breakout room from someone.
I'm doing that right now.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Thank
There you go. Laura, there's a question about the text. I'm going to add you to that room.
Okay.
Are you?
Welcome back, friends. All right, so we're going to turn to Mariano.
Yes, so I was wondering whether we should make a friendly amendment to change the wording, because I do have a change in what I had originally said, or whether I should withdraw this and make a new amendment.
Well, why don't you try it and we'll see how friendly it is.
All right. So as Laura had written down, that is the sentence that I'd wish to change. So I wrote down my newest suggestion.
Okay, so can you tell us, are we on lines in the, oh, no, we're up here. Okay, go ahead. So make your motion.
All right, so I move to amend the substitution so that both online and in person is stricken from where it is and moved to between the words act and as agents of peace.
So it reads as it says there.
Yes.
You see it before you. Just read that first 2 lines. Do you mind, Mario?
Therefore, we call upon all United Methodists, clergy and laity, to act both online and in person as agents of peace, open-mindedness, and mutual respect in the public sphere, while remaining steadfast in their compassionate solidarity with persons and communities targeted by hate, fear, and misinformation.
Great. Thank you very much. So that's the motion. Is there a second? I see Paul Nichols seconding. So it's before you to make, and so the question is this a friendly amendment? So let me just test. Is there anybody that wants to discuss this? Or if there's no one that wants to discuss it, I'll take that as a sign that you're ready to accept this as a friendly amendment. So show me a hand if you're not willing by consensus to accept this amendment. All right, I don't see any dissenting hands. So, and I know I just misspoke your name, Mariano, so I apologize for that. I want to make sure and get it right. So Mariano's amendment is accepted as a friendly amendment. And let's put the substitute up again, Laura, with that change made and the previous language removed, if we can do that. Okay, so this is the substitute that's before us. And the first question, so it's before us for discussion. The first vote that we will take is whether or not to substitute this for Standing Resolution 4 that was submitted by the Methodist Federation for Social Action by Karen Nelson. So are you ready to, is there discussion about substituting? Whether or not you want to substitute? Are you ready to vote on this, on substituting? So if you would substitute the Connor motion as amended for the originally submitted resolution, Standing Resolution number 4. Mike Connor asks if he's permitted to vote. You're a member of the Legislative Assembly, right? Mike, you are definitely eligible to vote. So if you would substitute the Connor language as amended by Estrada. Christy, are you voting or are you ready? No, you have something else to say?
No, I was voting. Someone rang at the doorbell. I'm voting yes.
Okay. All right. If you would support, if you would substitute the Connor version as amended by Estrada, please lift your hand. Right, those opposed, same sign. Abstentions? Results?
Bishops, we have 19 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions.
All right, so the substitute is now the main motion. It's been amended. The question is, are you ready to adopt the substitute to recommend to the annual conference as amended? Is there any further discussion? All right, if you would recommend this to the annual conference, please lift your hand.
Bishop, we have counted.
Oh, sorry. If you're opposed, please lift your hand. Abstentions?
It is 21 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions.
All right, thank you very much. Hey, that was good work. I think you worked well together. It's fun to work together, and you did good work, both critically reading what you had and creatively improving it in significant ways. So thank you very much. All right, we are getting close. We turn now to action request number 7, and Fungale Taufo'u is the shepherd for this. Funga, we're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Bishop. Bishop, I move that the Legislative Assembly recommends to the annual conference the adoption of action request number 7. And it is amending clergy housing standards policy.
All right, thank you very much, Funga. Yes, John?
So I would like to move for referral to the June 15th meeting.
So I gotta get a second first, John.
Okay.
Is there a second to this motion? Okay, I see June. All right, it's before us, John.
Okay, and Mark and I have been in communication throughout the day. I can give a short rationale or a longer rationale. I'm going to start with the short, and if that's good enough, I'll stop. I want to own.
Sorry, John, could you actually make the motion
first, the motion
please?
I'd like to move that we refer AR 7 to the June 15th session.
So I think you want to defer it till then.
I'm sorry, defer. Yeah, that's what I'm.
Okay, that's all right. Good. All right, that's the motion. Is there a second to that motion to defer? I see Warren Light seconding. So now give us your rationale.
Okay, so the short rationale is I want to own that the cabinet and the CFNA did not really have much conversation about this like we said we would. And I can promise that we will have the conversation and have clarity by June 15th. And Mark and I are in agreement. Mark's on CFNA, I'm on cabinet. And so we do think June 15th is sufficient time to have clarity around this. I can go on if that's not good enough.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So that's the motion is to defer action until the June gathering of the Legislative Assembly. Is there any other discussion about this motion? Then if you would defer, please lift your hand. Right, those opposed, same sign. Abstentions?
Thanks, Bishop. I see 18 in favor of deferral, 0 opposed, 1 abstention.
All right, so it is deferred until June 15th. Thank you. Thank you for that, John and Mark. So, Adam, have we completed our work?
Barring a revelatory comment from Brenda in the chat. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Brenda. That's a great note. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. My notes here indicate that we have addressed all of the legislation before us today. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Adam, for guiding us, all of us. So let's just, Ethan is going to kind of have some closing remarks to prepare us for what comes next, and then we'll have completed our business. So Ethan, let me turn to you.
Thank you, Bishop, and thank you, friends, for your hard and wonderful work today. So just a recap for us of the actions you've taken. So we've placed AR2, AR8, SR1, and SR5 will come before the annual conference on the consent calendar as they exceeded the 90% vote threshold of the Legislative Assembly. Items that will come before the plenary individually will be AR1, AR4, SR2, SR3, SR4, SR6, and SR7. AR3 was ruled out of order, and we have deferred AR5, AR6, and AR7 until our June 15th gathering from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. So look for further communications about that gathering in the weeks ahead. And I think that's all I've got, Bishop.
Thank you very much, Ethan. That's helpful to have that wrap up and know what's before us. A significant work that we're going to do again in June, and there may be other items that come as late breaking items as well. But we've done a good piece of work today, and I'm grateful to all of you for doing that. So, at the beginning of today, we kind of surveyed the earth that the sun and the grace of God dawned upon this morning, as it does every morning. We pray into the future, and we set the work that we have done before into the light of the light of the sun and into the grace of God. Will you pray with me? Holy God, we bring as much of our whole selves to our work as we can day by day, and we've done so today. I give you thanks for the bright minds, the generous hearts, the attentive spirits of each one present in this legislative assembly, all of those who prepared legislation to give voice to the murmurs of our hearts, to the cries of our hearts, to the tears of our hearts. Receive this work. Carry it forward as we carry it forward to the annual conference. Be with those who will continue to perfect some of the legislation that's before us. Be with those who may be preparing new legislation to come in June. And be, we pray, with all who will join together in the annual conference later in June to guide your church, to be responsive to the needs, the urgings, the desperate cries of your people, wherever they may be. We lift also today our United Methodist Church, that it might find a way to be united and faithful, to look into your heart, to know your heart, and to follow you into new places that it has never gone before, to embrace and to be inclusive and to be respond to the reality of the lives of people who are not now embraced by your church. We pray with confidence in the unfailing love of Jesus Christ poured out for us and for many. Amen. Thanks, Adam, Lori, Warren, Rondelay, Ethan, Kristen, Laura. Did I say Laura? Everyone that served as shepherds, everybody